Greetings and salutations, all my fellow American sovereigns. This is the Vocational Science of Freedom Saturday night civics and sovereignty class, and tonight will be our 10th reading of Conspirators'Hierarchy, which is a book written by Dr. John Coleman regarding the battle plan of the New World Order. And we'd been getting down to, past about 2/3, maybe getting into the last fourth of this book. And tonight, we'll be getting into JFK stuff. We'll be getting into literally the creation of Mossad and what other intelligence agencies connect into it. And some other nefarious things, which, not like I probably already have one, but will increase the likelihood of a red dot on the back of my head someday. Not to say this book isn't already published and everybody has the capacity to go and read it all they want to, but bringing light to things like this is usually something that tends to get people a little bit more attention than they tend to want from time to time. And I'm always well aware of the fact that that's a potential problem, and always consider it as a aspect of just part and parcel of what this is all about, as far as continuing our ability to teach and our ability to explain where these things come from and be open about it. Because honestly, the only way that we're ever going to win is by making sure that everybody knows about these things. And if you don't know who your enemy is, and you don't have the capacity to be able to name that enemy, you don't have the capacity to be able to teach about what they're doing, then you really don't have any capacity whatsoever to be able to win against your enemy. Because if you don't know your enemy and they know everything about you, well, then you're going to be in a position where you're always going to be at a disadvantage. And that has been pretty much the way of the world for a very long period of time, particularly in America and the destruction of the Republic, by clearly not allowing us to have any sort of information that's actually meaningful whatsoever regarding what's going on here and what's been going on for an awfully long time. So if you guys want to join Vocational Science of Freedom, just go to vocationalscienceoffreedom.org and then click on the welcome package up here and download it and fill it out and send it in to vsof@protonmail.com. And we'll make sure to clear you and get you into the mega rooms where we hold classes and where we hold Wednesday night roundtables. Okay. So with that, our reading left off talking about attacking the soul is the thrust of a host of experiments being readied. And I regret to say that institutions in the United States will play a leading role in the terrible experiments which have already been carried out on local small-scale levels and at such places as Bethesda Naval Hospital and Vacaville Prison in California. And prison experiments are something that these people are well versed in. I could get into a lot of stories, but I won't. As just an aside, if you look into what's called the prison industrial complex, that is a very deep rabbit hole in and of itself, but it's the way that these people have figured out so that with the Clinton omnibus crime bill, which was the whole idea of like 3 strikes and you're out, meaning if you get 3 felonies, it's life in prison for you. Even if it was things that had absolutely no damage party, meaning like you just got caught with drugs, say 3 times or something or other. And that created a huge prison population, basically a completely available slave workforce for the corporations that then use them. So that we would have a slave workforce right here in America without anybody really batting an eye at it. But from that, there are a lot of nefarious things that happen regarding prison populations, and a lot of the worst forms of experimentation, particularly regarding things like vaccines and other biological weapons have been used on prisoners for a very long time. And it's something that everybody should be aware of. And it's something that nobody really knows about because nobody cares. It's like, oh, it's just prison people, right? Whatever. Well, when you have these crazy, insane Luciferian occultists just doing whatever they want to willy-nilly, the problem is that they're doing it on them so that they can eventually do it to you, because they have to test it out on populations to make sure that it works to kill you before they implement. Yeah, Tuskegee experiment. That's a very good point. Breaking Spectre. That was what I was just thinking about, which wasn't even an aspect of the prison population. It was just like, hey, let's see how many people we can mess up with this one. And using a black populace to do it, obviously. And which is just another rabbit hole to go down. If you guys have no idea what the Tuskegee experiments were, low-income neighborhoods within various arrays around St. Louis, all unclassified now, and you can take a look at it and see what they did. This is Anthony Fauci on crack, basically. Like, no holds barred, do not give a shit. Let's just do whatever we want to huge populations, and then let's check the results, and let's see how we can manipulate these people. So, but anyway, to continue, the movies we have seen thus far include James Bond series, The Assassination Bureau, The Maltese Circle, and so on. They were make-believe movies designed to hide the truth that such organizations do exist, and on a far greater scale than even Hollywood's fertile idea men could dream up. Yet the Assassination Bureau is absolutely real. It exists in Europe and the United States solely to do the bidding of the Committee of 300, to carry out high-level assassinations where all other remedies have failed. It was Permindex which ran the Kennedy assassination under the direction of Sir William Stephenson. For years, the Queen of England's #1, quote-unquote, pest control operative. Clay Shaw, a contract agent for the CIA, ran Permindex out of the Trade Mart Center in New Orleans. Former New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison came close to cracking the Kennedy assassination plot up to the level of Clay Shaw until Garrison was, quote-unquote, dealt with. And Shaw was found not guilty of involvement in the Kennedy assassination plot. The fact that Shaw was eliminated in a manner of Jack Ruby, another CIA contract agent, both died of induced quick-acting cancer. Just want to emphasize that point, that's one of their more favorite ways to take out people because, hey, it just looks like he died of natural causes. Well, there's nothing natural about it at all. This speaks volumes that Garrison was on the right track. A second assassination bureau is located in Switzerland and was, until recently, run by a shadowy figure to whom no photographs exist after 1941. The operations were, and probably still are, financed by the Altmaier family, Swiss black nobility, owners of the Lombard Oiler Bank of Geneva, a Committee of 300 operation. The primary contact man was Jacques Sostel. This according to U.S. Army G2 intelligence files. This group was also closely allied with Allen Dulles, no surprise there, and Jean DeMinley, an important member of the Committee of 300 and a very important name in the oil industry in Texas. Army G2 records showed that the group was heavily involved in the arms trade in the Middle East. But more than that, the Assassination Bureau made no less than 30 attempts to assassinate General de Gaulle. 30 attempts, that's a lot. Guy must have had some sort of decent protection. In which Jacques Sostel was directly involved. The name Sostel was the contact man for Sendero, the MOSSAD Shining Pathway guerrilla group protecting the committee's Peruvian cocaine producers. When all the best that the Assassination Bureau could do had failed, thanks to the excellent work done by DGSE, French intelligence, formerly SDECE, The job was assigned to MI6 Military Intelligence Department 6, also known as Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, under the code name Jackal. As I recall, there's a movie named that as well, probably talking a little bit about this. SDEC employed clever young graduates and was not infiltrated by MI6 or the KGB to any measurable extent. Its record in tracking down foreign agents made it the envy of the secret services of every nation, and it was this group that followed Jackal to his final destination and then killed him before he could fire on General de Gaulle's motorcade. It was the SDECE who uncovered a Soviet mole in the cabinet of de Gaulle, who also happened to be a liaison man with the CIA in Langley. In order to discredit the SDECE, Alan Dulles, who hated de Gaulle, the feeling was mutual, had one of its agents, Roger de Louet, caught with $12 million worth of heroin in his possession. After a great deal of expert interrogation, de Louet confessed, quote-unquote confessed, but was unable to say why he was smuggling drugs into the United States. The whole thing stank to high heaven of a setup. Based upon an examination of SDECE methods in protecting de Gaulle, especially in motorcades, the FBI, Secret Service, and the CIA knew exactly how to strip President Kennedy of his security and make it easy for the three Permindex shooters to murder him, Delaney Plaza, in November 1963. Another example of fact disguised as fiction is the Leon Uris novel Topaz. In Topaz, we find a factual account of the activities of Thread de Bosjoli, the very KGB agent uncovered by SDECE and denounced as the KGB's liaison man with the CIA. There are many fictionalized accounts of the Mossad's activities, nearly all of which are based on fact. The Mossad is also known as, quote-unquote, the Institute. Many would-be writers make nonsensical statements about it, especially one writer who is much in favor with the Christian right wing, which is accepted as truth. Now, I don't have any idea who he's talking about, but would make sense that some writer that was obviously a Zionist would give out false information regarding Mossad. I would say anybody that didn't do that, that was part of that group, would probably be removed fairly quickly. One can pardon the offender because he has no intelligence training, but that does not stop him from dropping, quote-unquote, Mossad names all over the place. Such disinformation exercises are routinely run against American right-wing patriot groups. Originally, the Mossad consisted of three groups: the Bureau of Military Intelligence, the Political Department of the Foreign Office, and the Department of Security. And I'm not even going to attempt to try and pronounce that Hebrew name, which is, I'm guessing, what that is. David Ben-Gurion, a member of the Committee of 300, received some considerable help from MI6 in putting it together. But it was not a success, and in 1951, Sir William Stephenson of MI6 restructured it into a single unit as arm of the political department of the Israeli Foreign Office, with a special operations group for espionage and quote-unquote black job operations. British intelligence gave further assistance in training and equipping for servicing the, I'll attempt to pronounce this, Sharet Maktal, Sharet Maktal, I guess. That's my best attempt. Also known as the General Staff Reconnaissance Unit. In the format of Britain's Special Air Services, SAS, this service unit of the Mossad is never mentioned by name and is simply known as the Guys. The Guys are merely an extension of British intelligence's SAS unit, who is continually training and updating them with new methods. It was the Guys who killed the leaders of the PLO and kidnapped Adolf Eichmann. The Guys, and indeed all Mossad agents, operate on wartime footing. The Mossad has a tremendous advantage over other intelligence services in that every country in the world has a large Jewish community. By studying social and criminal records, the Mossad is able to pick agents among local Jews, can have and hold over and make them work for it without pay. How convenient. The Mossad also has the advantage of having access to records of, get this, all U.S. law enforcement agencies and U.S. intelligence services, the Office of Naval Intelligence Services, and the Mossad can do all this at no cost to Israel. Citizens of the United States would be shocked, angered, and dismayed if ever it was discovered just how much the Mossad knows about their lives of millions of Americans in every walk of life, even those who are not political in any way. The first head of Mossad, Reuben Shylock, was made a member of the Committee of 300, but it is not known whether his successor enjoyed the same privilege. Chances are that he does. The Mossad has a skillful disinformation service. The amount of disinformation it feeds to the American quote-unquote market is embarrassing. But even more embarrassing is how it is swallowed hook, line, and sinker and all. What we are actually witnessing in its microcosm of the Mossad is the extent of control exercised by the Olympians. And we spoke of earlier in past readings that that's what the Committee of the 300 likes to call themselves, is the Olympians. To continue, it is the extent of the control exercised by the Olympians over the intelligence services, entertainment, publishing, opinion-making polls on television, news media on a global scale. Ted Turner was recently given a seat on the Committee of 300 in recognition for his news-making CNN broadcasts. That doesn't surprise me in the least bit either. The committee has the power and the means to tell people of this world anything, and it will be believed by the vast majority. On every occasion that a researcher happens upon this astonishing central control group, he is either successfully bought off, well, probably killed off too, or else he undergoes some specialty training at the Tavistock Institute, which he becomes a contributor to more fiction of the James Bond type, i.e., he is derailed and well rewarded. If such a person as JFK should stumble upon the truth about who directs world events and cannot be bought, he is assassinated. In the case of JFK, the assassination was carried out with great attention publicly and with the utmost brutality to serve as a warning to world leaders not to get out of line. Pope John Paul I was quietly murdered because he was getting too close to the Committee of 300 through Freemasons in the Vatican hierarchy. His successor, Pope John Paul XI, was publicly humiliated as a warning to cease and desist, which he has done. We shall see certain Vatican leaders are today seated on the Committee of 300. It is easy to put serious research off track of the Committee of 300 because Britain's MI6, SAS, promotes a wide variety of kookery, such as the New Age, yogiism, witchcraft, Delphiac, priesthood of Apollo. Aristotle was a member, and hundreds of small, quote-unquote, cults of all kinds. A group of retired British intelligence agents who stayed on the track labeled the Conspirators'Hierarchy Force X and declared that it possesses a superintelligence service that has corrupted the KGB, the Vatican intelligence, the CIA, the ONI, the DGSE, U.S. military intelligence, the State Department intelligence service, and even most secret of the U.S. intelligence agencies, the Office of National Reconnaissance. The existence of the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, was known to only a handful of people outside the Committee of 300 until Truman stumbled upon it quite by accident. Churchill had a hand in setting up the NRO, and he was reportedly livid when Truman discovered its existence. Churchill, more than any other servant of the Committee of 300, considered Truman his little man from Independence, without an independence at all. He referred to Truman's every move being controlled by Freemasonry. That's true. What most people don't know about Truman was that he was a member of the Jesters, and I literally have his signed paperwork that he was a member of the Jesters. Now, if none of you know who the Jesters are, they are a kind of sort of subgroup of Masonry. Basically, what the Jesters do and what they do for other groups is they're basically like the party boys. So the Jesters are the ones that'll go get the prostitutes, they'll go get the cocaine, they'll go get whatever drugs you want. They'll set up the locations to have the parties, blah, blah, blah. And the Jesters worship this little fat demon looking fuck called Mirth, who's basically an evil little bastard that just basically worships money and sex and drugs, and that's him. So Truman was a Jester. And yes, the Jesters are, like I said, kind of an extension, if you will, but they're also more or less controlled by the Masons. So I might, if I remember after class, I might make a point to put that little document into the show notes, into the mega file for this class, because it's something that everybody should, be able to pull out and be like, hey, this is what this president was doing at the time. But anyway, to continue. All right. So even today, NRO's annual budget is not known to the Congress of the United States, and it is responsible to only a select few in Congress. But it is a creature of the Committee of 300, to whom its reports are routinely sent every few hours. Thus, the fictionalized spoofs one sees about the various branches and arms and control of the committee were designed to take suspicion away from the real thing. But we should never doubt that the real thing does indeed exist. Take another example of what I mean, the book The Day of the Jackal, from which a highly successful movie was created. The events related to the book are factual, although, for obvious reasons, the names of some of the players and the locales were changed. But the thrust of the story, that a single MI6 operative was assigned to get rid of General Charles de Gaulle, is absolutely correct. General de Gaulle had become unmanageable, refusing to cooperate with the committee, whose existence he knew very well since he had been invited to join it. It came to a climax when de Gaulle withdrew France from NATO. Wait, what? I didn't even know that ever happened. Yeah, if there's a reason to take somebody out, that would certainly be it. Okay, so anyway, came to a climax when de Gaulle withdrew France from NATO and immediately began building his own nuclear force, the so-called Force de Frappe. This so angered the committee that de Gaulle's assassination was ordered, but the French Secret Service was able to intercept Jackal's plans and kept de Gaulle safe. In the light of the record of MI6, which I might add is the Committee of 300's main resource for when it comes to intelligence, the work done by the French intelligence borders on the miraculous. Okay. Military Intelligence Department 6 dates back to Sir Francis Walsingham's paymaster of Queen Elizabeth I for dirty tricks operations. That's an interesting piece of history that I did not know. So Sir Francis Walsingham was the one that created MI6. Wow, that goes back quite a ways. Okay. That connects quite a few dots for me. I don't know how much anybody knows about the history of England or even who Walsingham was. But you want to talk about a lot of the things that happened during Queen Elizabeth's time and how she stayed so powerful and how she did not get killed, even though there were several attempts to take her out. That was all Walsingham. But anyway, if you want to do a deep dive on that, you guys are perfectly willing to do so. In the movie, I think it was just called Elizabeth. Sir Francis Walsingham was definitely one of the main characters, and you can kind of tell like how he kind of ran Queen Elizabeth's reign and knew what everybody else was doing all the time. And so it kind of makes sense that MI6 came out of him. Spectre said, wonder if Unit 8200 was formed after these writings. spin-off operation of Mossad. Maybe, I don't know. I have heard of that unit, but I don't know when it was created. He may or may not get into it. I don't know. But anyway, to continue. So, okay, so Queen Elizabeth for dirty tricks operations. All right, so over hundreds of years, MI6 has established a record which no other intelligence agency can come near to duplicating. Right, because I did not realize that it went back that far, but it makes sense now. MI6 agents have gathered information from the four corners of the earth and have carried out secret operations that would astound even the most knowledgeable if ever they were to be made public, which is why it rates as the master service of the Committee of 300. Officially, MI6 does not exist. Its budget comes out of the Queen's purse and private funds, and is reported to be in a range of 350 to 500 million per annum. Now, of course, remember, we're talking here 1992. So that's going to put some inflation on that quite a bit. But no one knows for sure what the exact amount is. In its present form, MI6 dates back to 1911, when it was under the leadership of Sir Mansfield Cumming, a captain of the Royal Navy, who was also identified by the letter C, from which, quote-unquote, M of the James Bond fame is taken. No official record of the MI6 failures and successes exists. It is that secret. Although the Burgess McLean Blake Blunt disasters did great damage to the morale of MI6 officers, I have no idea what that's talking about. Unlike other services, future members are recruited from universities and other areas of learning by highly skilled talent scouts, as we saw in the case of Rhodes Scholars introduced into the Round Table. One of the requirements is an ability to speak foreign languages. Right, quite a few on top of it, I'm sure. Candidates undergo a rigorous blooding, which the backing of such a formidable force, the Committee of 300 had little fear from even being exposed, and this will go on for decades. What makes the committee incredible is the incredible secrecy that prevails. None of the news media has ever made mention of this conspiratorial hierarchy. Therefore, as it to be expected, people doubt its existence. The Committee of 300 is, for the most part, under the control of the British monarch, in this case, Queen Elizabeth, well, now the King. Queen Victoria is believed to have been quite paranoid about keeping it a secret, and went to great lengths to cover up Masonic writings left at the scene of Jack the Ripper, murders which allude to the Committee of 300's connections with quote-unquote experiments carried out by a family member who was also a highly placed member of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. The Committee of 300 is filled with members of the British aristocracy, which has interests in associates in every country of the world, including the USSR, now just Russia. The committee structure is as follows. The Tavistock Institute at Sussex University and London sites is owned and controlled by the Royal Institute for International Affairs, whose Hofjuden is America. In America is Henry Kissinger. Oh, good Jew, I think is what that. I think is how that translates in German. If anybody knows German, you could please tell me or correct me. But that sounds about right, based upon how they were talking about Kissinger in the last few readings. The Eagle Star Group, which changed its name to the Star Group after the close of the Second World War, is composed of a group of major international companies involved in overlapping and interfaced areas: insurance, banking, real estate, entertainment, high technology, including cybernetics, electronic communications, etc. Banking, while not the mainstay, is vitally important, especially in the areas where banks act as clearinghouses and money laundering of drug money. Yeah, to make a point about that, there have been some people recently that were arguing with me on various different platforms, X being one of them. And I was explaining to people about the aspect of the Committee in 300, and that the immense amount of money in drug sales over, these hundreds and hundreds of years, just like dwarfs like anything else. And they were trying to argue with me. They're like, no, central banking is way more important than that. I'm like, no, it's not. It doesn't make them more money than that. It's a control mechanism, surely. And now when you have things like the IMF and the World Bank running the special drawing rights system, which is every country that has a central bank has special drawing rights from the IMF. But the reason that, so the question is, what are they drawing off of? They're drawing off of your estate, because your estate gets registered and it gets tallied. And each nation that's connected with the IMF says, okay, this is how many infants we're, basically administering. And then the IMF, World Bank says, okay, here's your special drawing rights to take care of said infants. Because this is all about the administration of abandoned infant estates. Nothing else. That's totally what it's about. The whole entire system runs on that. And of course, we can get out of it. If you take the VSOF classes and understand how to get out of it, you know that there is a way out. But that connection with the banks and what they are, yeah, they make money off of it. Yes, obviously. But it's more of a control mechanism. Their real money comes from all of these years of drug trade, particularly when you talk about the British aristocracy and the English monarchy. That's very, very much part and parcel of it. And yes, there's human trafficking in there as well. And there's obviously other things as far as other control mechanisms like blackmail and assassinations. But so anyway, just wanted to kind of make that point that some people don't really realize like how big the money is from the drug trade. All right, to continue, the main quote unquote big name banks are the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Banks, Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, and the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. American Express Bank is a means of recycling drug dollars. Each of these banks is affiliated with and or controls hundreds of thousands of large and small banks throughout the world. Banks large and small in the thousands are in the Committee of 300 network, including Banca Commerciale d'Italia, Banca Privata, Banco Ambrosiano. These sound like Italian banks. The Netherlands Bank, Barclays. That's one pretty much everybody knows. And then looks like a bunch of other little ones. BIS, since it handles flight capital investments to and from the United States, primarily in dollars and U.S. bonds, located and isolated in quote-unquote neutral Lugano, the flight capital center of the Venetian black nobility. Okay. That, all right, makes perfect sense. I think he spoke a bit about BSI before, but okay, that would make sense. So that it is the flight capital center for the Venetian black nobility. All right, so Lugano is not in Italy or in Switzerland, and is a kind of twilight zone for shady flight capital operations. George Ball, who owns a large block of stock in BSI, is a prominent insider and the Hanks U.S. representative. BCCI, BNL, Banco Mercantil de Mexico, Banco Nacional de Panama, and again, a bunch of these other banks, which I'm not going to ramble off. It's quite a long list. And the Royal Bank of Canada. That's where it ends. To name but a very small number in a huge list of quote-unquote specialty banks. The Oppenheimers of South Africa are much bigger heavyweights than the Rockefellers. I'm going to read that again, because people want to argue this with me all the time too. They're like, the Rockefellers control everything. No, they don't. People need to learn their fucking facts or shut up. Honestly, sorry. I don't mean to get upset. It's just, it pisses me off when people like come at you and be like, you're just wrong because I say you're wrong. Like, no, I'm not. And maybe you should go learn something. I'm going to read this again. The Oppenheimers of South Africa are much bigger heavyweights than the Rockefellers. For instance, in 1981, Harry Oppenheimer, chairman of the giant Anglo-American corporation that controls gold and diamond mining, sales and distribution in the world, stated that he was about to launch into North American banking market. Oppenheimer promptly invested $10 billion in a specially created vehicle for the purpose of buying into big banks in the U.S., among which was Citicorp. Oppenheimer's investment vehicle was called Minorco, which set up shop in Bermuda, a British royal family preserve. On the board of Minorco was to be found Walter Ristons of Citicorp and Albert Clare, its chief counsel. The only other company to rival Oppenheimer in the field of precious metals and minerals was Consolidated Goldfields of South Africa, but Oppenheimer took control of it with a 28% stake, the largest single shareholder. Thus, gold, diamonds, platinum, titanium, talcite, copper, iron ore, uranium, and 52 other metals and minerals, many of them of absolutely vital strategic value to the United States, passed into the hands of the Committee of 300. Thus was the vision of one of the earlier South African members of the Committee of 300, Cecil John Rhodes, which we talked about extensively prior regarding the Rhodes Roundtable, regarding the Rhodes Scholars, and everything else that son of a bitch set up. Janice says, how big is the drug trade money? Scheinbaum and her 33 plus assassinations to win the presidency of Mexico. Right. That's not to be overlooked either, because that is their current, well, one of their most recent. Here, let's see what we can do in this country sort of fuckery. And yeah, that's a good suggestion. Hey, Commander, that the Sassoon Opium Empire, there's been several documentaries on it, and they're all good. I don't know which one you're specifically referring to, but if you want to drop the link in chat, so everybody else can hang out and check it out too, that'd be cool. Because these things are all interconnected, and we did the Opium Wars. We already did readings through the Opium Wars regarding this, what's in this book, but every little part of this, as to current events like what Janice just talked about, and then connecting them back into all these other powerful connections and these older families is important, because they're not going away, and they are the ones that will decide, hey, it's time to start culling everybody, right? So we want to end the fuckery. It really does end with them. But anyway, to continue. Okay, so Cecil John Rhodes fully realized a vision which started with the spinning of the blood of thousands and thousands of white farmers and their families in South Africa, whose history records as the Boer Wars. While the United States stood by with folded hands, as did the rest of the world, this small nation was subjected to the most vicious war of genocide in history. The United States will be subjected to the same treatment by the Committee of 300 when our turn comes, and it will not be long in coming. I tend to agree with that, and I tend to want people to fully realize that it's been coming for a long time, but we're seeing it manifest in different ways, and I don't want to digress, but let's just say this. The fifth generational war is getting ramped up by the Committee of 300. And unless you know about the Committee of 300, unless you go and watch the VSOF timeline class, which is more about law, but just saying, if you don't take these deep dives and shit starts happening, you'll have no clue why they're happening. Which is why it's important to sit down and figure this stuff out and map it out as best you possibly can. And I'm not saying that I've mapped out everything. I certainly haven't. But I've done my share of 30 years in making sure that you guys do know what's going on, or at least as best as you possibly can know it. And I'm going to, on that note, I'm going to make a purchase from a guy named Richard Grove, who's been putting together this brain model, which he's been doing for decades, which makes a lot of these connections, more current connections, but still quite a few. He has something like 10,000 entries, which are all very, very good as to the connection of it. And he just put his brain model on sale, I think, for like $300. I'm going to get it and then make sure that when we get our server set up, that I'll have it available for everybody. And if you guys don't know what the brain model is, just go check it out. It's a type of software that's very useful for kind of organizing things like this, like what on earth is going on in the world, and making connections to other connections to other connections. So, okay, cool. Thanks. Hey, Commander. So he put up the documentary he was listening to about the Sassoon opium trade. And that's on Rumble if you guys want to go check out Rumble chat real quick. Okay, so to continue. All right. Insurance companies. Oh, here we go. This is something else that people don't want to believe. Or when I tell them, they're like, no, it's the banks. Insurance companies play a key role in the business of the Committee of 300. Among these are found such top insurance companies as Assuranze Giraldi of Venice and Riunati Adritica di Securita. I'm horrible with pronouncing Italian names. And also, let's not miss out on one of the largest insurance companies and oldest insurance companies that's existed on the planet, which of course is Lloyd's of London. So the second largest and the largest insurance companies in the world, who keep their bank accounts at Bank of International Settlements in Swiss gold francs. Both control a multiplicity of investment banks whose turnover in stocks on Wall Street double that of U.S. investors. Did you catch that? Yeah. Prominent on the board of these two insurance giants are Committee of 300 members, the Giustiniani family, black nobility of Rome and Venice, who trace their lineage to the Emperor Justinian. Sir Jacqueline Hambro of Hambro's Merchant Bank, Pierpaolo Zalati Franquitz, again, I'm sure I'm butchering these, whose lineage dates back to 6 centuries to the most ancient Lozados, the black nobility of Venice, and Umbro Ortolini of the ancient black nobility family of the same name. Yes, again, I don't want to digress here, but to understand what the Venetian black nobility is and understand all of the connections of who they are, and let me just put it this way. I'll kind of sum them up, well, not sum them up, but I'll give you guys an idea of like what they are in one single explanation here. Okay, so when the cult of Rome decided to write the first papal bull, which was literally the first testamentary trust, this is what happened. So unum sanctum, the Pope decided to put the entire planet into trust just because he felt like he could do it. And he named the Christians of the world the beneficiaries of said trust. And he named himself and the rest of the cult of Rome as the administrators of the executors of the trust. And he named, guess who? The Venetian black nobility as the trustees and the bankers of said same thing. So from that point, that's who's been in control of the world banking system since then, at least as far as the cult of Rome is concerned, is what is called and what he's referring to here in this book as the Venetian black nobility. So anyway, to continue. So other committees of 300 members on board members of the ASG and RAS are the Dora family, the financiers of the Spanish Habsburgs, L.A.D. Rothschild of the French Rothschild family, Baron August von Fink, the second richest man in Germany, is now deceased, Franco Ornici Bonacassi of the ancient Ornici black nobility that traces its lineage to an ancient Roman senator of the same name. See, these houses go all the way back to Rome, people. I just want everybody to know how far this goes back. The Alba family, whose lineage dates back to the great Duke of Alba, and Baron Prit Lambert, a cousin of Belgian Rothschild family. The English companies controlled by the British royal family are Eagle Star Prudential Assurance Company. Yes, that's Prudential Life Insurance, everybody. Which own and control most American insurers, including Allstate Insurance. At the head of the list is Eagle Star, probably the most powerful front for Military Intelligence Department 6, MI6. Eagle Star, although nowhere near as large as Curzani Generale, is perhaps equally important because it is owned by members of the Queen of England's family, and as head of Committee of 300, Eagle Star makes a tremendous impact. Eagle Star is more than a major quote-unquote front for MI6. It is also a major front for British banks, including Hill Samuels, N.M. Rothschild & Sons, one of the old gold price fixers who meet daily in London, and Barclays Bank, one of the founders of the African National Congress, ANC. And it can be said with a great degree of accuracy that the most powerful British oligarchical families created Eagle Star as a vehicle for black operations against those who oppose the Committee of 300 policies. Unlike the CIA, British law makes it a serious crime to name MI6 officials. So the following is but a partial list of quote-unquote top brass of MI6 who are or were also members of the Committee of 300. So Lord Hartley Shawcross, Sir Brian Edward Mountain, Sir Kenneth Keith, Sir Kenneth Strong, Sir William Stephenson, Sir William Wiseman. All the foregoing are or were heavily involved in key Committee 300 companies, which interface with literally thousands of companies engaged in every branch of commercial activity, as we shall see. 14 words. Just curious, where does Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or, well, depends if you're talking about Blue Cross, Blue Shield as far as like their insurance, or if you're talking about like the other things that they might be doing, that would depend. I don't think he's mentioned Blue Cross in this entire book. But since we're talking about insurance companies here, if he doesn't bring it up here, it's probably not even worth bringing it up. Like it doesn't even come close to hitting the radar of level or size of importance. Or it's just completely controlled by one of these other companies that actually does carry the reins. That's what I'd probably deduce just from the lack of its being brought up. But not to say that I'm, some sort of expert as to what it is. I'm not sure, but I'm just kind of deducing that from the fact that it hasn't been brought up yet. Okay, so to continue. Some of these companies include Rank Organization, Xerox Corporation, ITT, IBM, RCA, CBS, NBC, BBC, NCBC in communications, Raytheon, Textron, Bendix, Atlantic Richfield, British Petroleum, Royal Dutch Shell, Marine Midland Bank, Lehman Brothers, Kuhn Loeb and Company. Probably would also stem back to various different trust companies, but if he's not going to bring them up, I won't mention them. General Electric, Westinghouse Corporation, United Fruit Company, and a great many more. MI6 ran a large number of these companies through British intelligence stationed in RCA building in New York, which was the headquarters of its chief officer, Sir William Stephenson. Radio Corporation of America, RCA, was formed by GE Westinghouse, Morgan Guarantee and Trust, acting for the British Crown, and United Fruit, back in 1919, as a British intelligence center. Interesting. So all those companies got together and created RCA. Fascinating. RCA's first president was J.P. Morgan's Owen Young, after whom the Young Plan was named. In 1929, David Starnoff was appointed to run RCA. Starnoff had acted as an assistant to Young at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, where a fallen Germany was stabbed in the back by the victorious quote-unquote allies. A network of Wall Street banks and brokerage houses takes care of the stock market for the committee, and prominent among these are Bliss, Eastman Dillon, the Morgan Groups, Lazard Fairs, and Kuhn Loeb Rhodes. Nothing happens on Wall Street that is not controlled by the Bank of England, whose instructions are relayed through the Morgan Groups and then put into action through key brokerage houses who have top executives are ultimately responsible for carrying out committee directives. And in these days of 2025, close to be 26, all of this fuckery like this, you can goddamn guarantee that every single aspect of high-speed trading is all controlled by them. All they did was figure out a way to skim off millions and millions and millions of dollars every single day from these high-speed trading networks. And you want to really deep dive into that. Richard Grove did a documentary called Project Constellation, and he was a whistleblower because he was actually selling the software to these various different banks on Wall Street and realized that this shit had a back door in it, that somebody could see what everybody else was doing as far as the trades were concerned. I honestly don't know why Rich is still alive. I guess because he kind of did his own whistleblowing suit and literally went up against the largest law firm in the entire planet because obviously it's backed by these fuckers. So he lost on a technicality, but he did prove that, hey, there were backdoors and everything, and you guys, aren't doing anything about it. The FCC doesn't care because the FCC is completely controlled by the Committee of 300. So just anyway, as a side note, that's also part and parcel of the current fuckery, if you will, regarding banks and trading. But to continue, all right. Before it overstepped the limits laid down by Morgan Guarantee, Drexel Burnham Lambert was a favorite of the Committee of 300. In 1981, almost every major brokerage house on Wall Street had sold out to the committee. Finborough merging with Salomon Brothers. Finborough is the business arm of the Oppenheimers of Anglo-American Corporation. By this control mechanism, the Committee of 300 ensures that its members and their far-flung businesses, corporations, turn their investments on Wall Street over at a rate of double that of the non-insider foreign investors. Again, so you have this insider trading. And by the way, this is where Congress gets all of its information as well. If you play ball and you're a good goy in Congress, well, you get the same information that all the rest of these fuckers do. And that's how all this inside trading happens. And if everybody just, makes exactly the same trades that, say, Nancy Pelosi does every day, you literally cannot lose money, like ever, because they're getting all the information, all on the backside. So anyway, this is not stock advice, but there are actually trackers. People have developed trackers that track every single trade that, say, Nancy Pelosi makes. So if you have 10 grand and you get a hold of that tracker and you just start making trades every single day, just follow the tracker, you cannot lose money, period, full stop. Now, again, I just said that wasn't stock advice, but you get my point. The people on the inside are not going to be losing money. Oh, they criminalized tracking Pelosi's trades? So somebody criminalized it now. No shit. Okay. Why does that not surprise me? Well, people can still do it with Warren Buffett. So they just what? They just criminalized just Nancy Pelosi or anybody in Congress trades? Is that what they did? And by the way, I haven't heard of this yet, but that's what Janice just said in chat. Anyway, I know that there's trackers that do exist. Now, if they just took her off of the pile, okay, fine. But it would still work for anybody that's still an insider, unless, of course, they got rid of all of Congress. In that case, you just lost the big potential to be able to make it. But like I said, there's still trackers for people like Warren Buffett and other people. But apparently it counts as insider trading, but it's not a crime if they do it. Okay, yeah, right. Good point. But anyway, all right, to continue. Remember, some of the richest families in the world live in Europe, so it is natural that they could have a preponderance of members on the committee. The von Thun and Taxis family, who once owned the German postal franchise, make David Rockefeller look like a very poor relation. Right. The von Thun und Taxis dynasty dates back 300 years, and generation after generation of family members have had seats on the committee, which they occupy to this day. We have already mentioned by name many of the most wealthy Venetian black nobility members of the Committee of 300, and other names will be added as we come across them in their various fields of endeavor. Now we shall include some American families of the Committee of 300 and try to trace their affiliations and connections to the British Crown. Okay, this is a good place to pause, because this is a good place to be able to restart. But again, we're getting down to, again, probably now maybe we're 4/5 through it. Okay, so with that, again, if all of you would like to join the Vocational Science of Freedom, please do so by going to vocationalscienceoffreedom.org, clicking on the Welcome Package, downloading it, setting up your comms with us, and joining the mega server, of which we will be holding Wednesday night roundtable, of which all topics are open for discussion. There is usually not any specific topic unless I have something specific or somebody else has something to bring up. It is open roundtable, literally. You want to talk about anything, you want to bring a subject, do it. You want to ask questions, that's the place to do it. You want to ask about the doc set, that's the place to do it. So with that, I will see everybody in the VSOF on Wednesday night for Roundtable. Hope the rest of you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Until then, stay safe and stay sovereign.